PNR Networks is a member of Patreon. Show your love for our shows by joining our ongoing fundraising campaign and get some fantastic perks in return. Check it out and become a Patreon sponsor. You can sign up at patreon.com, patreon.com/PNR Networks. And thanks for your support.
This podcast is a member of the Blueberry Network. Blueberry. No E's. That's Blueberry, BLUBRRY.com. Blueberry.com.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
It's Kim versus TC in the battle of the lists.
My list is better.
My list is better.
My list is better.
No, it's not. My list is better.
Kim or TC, who has the better list? From Subject Cinema, this is Front Row 5 and 10 with Kim Brown and TC Kirkham.
Hi guys, welcome to another week here on Front Row 5 and 10, brought to you by the good folks that bring you Subject Cinema. That would be me and him, the me part of that equation being Kim Brown.
And the me part and the him part. The him part being me. That's very confusing. TC Kirkham.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's Wednesday. It's late. Going to be up late because we're really late getting started because it's almost Thanksgiving and just kind of crazy commutes and stuff going on, making stuff for Thanksgiving stuff.
Shopping for food and just the whole Turkey Day craziness, you know.
So, you picked this week's list. If you've got a list, we want to know what it is. Give us your ideas for a list, and if we use it, you get credit on the air, credit in the show notes, and maybe something else. You never know.
Yeah.
Write to us at front row at PNRNetworks.com. What was your choice this week?
My choice for this week's Front Row 5 and 10 are our top 10 favorite detectives.
Woohoo!
Now, these do not have to be professional detectives. They can be amateur detectives, and they can be from any form of entertainment, movies, television, print, wherever you'd like to bring them up from, as long as they're people that do detective work.
So we get to be a good detective, huh?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So, that means I start to your list?
Yes.
All right, let's get things underway right here with our top 10 favorite detectives. My number 10, I don't know if I'd actually call her a favorite. I think I didn't really go for favorite. I just got, like, sort of favorites, the ones I like. Although, when you think about it, it probably is favorites.
Okay.
I always like this woman because she's kind of a nosy old biddy. And yet, everybody likes her. Until she gets in their business, and then they don't like her anymore.
Okay.
She's been brought to TV and movies lots of times. My number 10 is Miss Jane Marple from the Agatha Christie novels. Miss Marple is in her 60s, maybe 70s. She's best known played by Joan Hickson, was that her name? Mm-hmm. But she's also been played by a number of different actresses over the years, including Helen Hayes and a number of other people. She's definitely just your next door neighbor lady, elderly neighbor lady who likes to get her gossip in and gets her nose out of joint when she smells something going on that's fishy.
Yep.
Usually it's murder around her house in a little village there in England. She's very popular, too. I mean, the book sold millions and millions and millions. My mother was a big fan. Number 10 for me, Miss Jane Marple.
Okay. My number 10 is a person that's a character that's probably one of the best-known detectives out there. But ironically enough, has not been played on film that much. But when he made an impression. My number 10 character as a favorite detective, Sam Spade. Played with unbelievable panache and style that will never ever be duplicated by Humphrey Bogart in The Maltese Falcon, which was actually the second time this was done. The Maltese Falcon was first filmed in 1931 with a gentleman named Ricardo Cortez as Sam Spade. The version that everybody remembers is, of course, the 1941 version with Humphrey Bogart. Sam Spade is a private detective in business with another detective and also seeing the other detective's wife on the side. Awkward. When his partner gets murdered, though, he does feel like if a man's partner gets murdered, he's supposed to do something about it. And that brings him in contact with dangerous women, even more dangerous men, and a little black statue that turns out to be the stuff that dreams are made of. He is a tough guy, but he doesn't take himself too seriously, which I really like about him. And I think he has a really strong moral code as well. He might not seem like he does, but he does. It's just buried under a lot of cynicism. My number 10, Sam Spade.
Okay, that's good. Number 10, huh?
Yep.
My number 9 is a private detective that you don't think much of because he's kind of sitting in the background. He's there in all of the cases handled by his boss, but he's just kind of like doing the footwork most of the time. Mm-hmm. But he's always there to rush into the courtroom that Perry Mason is at and save the day. My number 9, Paul Drake, played by William Hopper in the original television series. Paul is this womanizing, sarcastic sense of humor private detective regularly employed by defense attorney Perry Mason, who he sends out to find witnesses, to hide witnesses, to do all kinds of things.
Dig up clues.
When you think about Perry and the way he operates, not everything he does is kosher with the law either, which is interesting because he gets away with it, and it's partially because of Paul Drake. Paul's a very amiable guy. People like to talk to him, and sometimes they say too much, which is how come he can do that whole rush into the courtroom and save Perry's client from and make Hamilton Berger look like a fool again. Mm-hmm. Over 600 times over the course of 10 years on the original series. Later replaced by his son, Paul Drake Jr. on the TV movies, but in the original, no better. William Hopper playing Paul Drake, number 9.
Okay. That's a great choice. And he almost made my list. Number 9 for me is the only character on my list that has only been seen in print so far. Print and audiobooks and that kind of a thing. Which is a shame, since I think that she as a character would be great on the small screen as a continuing series of maybe TV movies about her adventures. My number 9 character is named Goldie Schultz. Well, Goldie Schulz. She was originally, when the series started, Goldie Bear. And she got married as the series went on. This is a series of culinary mysteries by Diane Mott Davidson, who is one of my favorite authors of all time. She has written 17 books starring Goldie, and Goldie's one of these people that just
Are these the books with the really bad pun titles?
Some of them are pretty bad.
Okay.
You've got things like Sticks and Scones, and know. The Main Corpse, stuff like that. I'm sorry, I'm a sucker for puns. Sue me. But Goldie
Excellent.
Thank you. That was good. I guess the yoke's on me.
Yep.
Please, we need to stop this.
Yes, I know.
It's going to get worse.
It will.
The thing about Goldie that I really like is the fact that she's got a great core of inner strength. She's a woman that's been she was married previously. Turned out to be her first husband was abusive, physically and emotionally abusive. She got away from that, managed to raise her son as a single mom, start her own catering business, and manages to solve crimes on the side. That's pretty badass. I think she'd be a really terrific character for somebody to bring to the small screen. I think she'd be great. Mm-hmm. So my number 9, Goldie Schulz.
Okay. My number 8 is a team.
Okay.
Because they always work together as a team, although they do have separate tasks each time. But they're always very good at the research and the footwork and putting all the clues together. They have to be able to do really well because I've never ever known them not to get their man. And that's pretty amazing considering the 3 of them are just 12 years old in the original books. My number 8, Jupiter Jones, Pete Crenshaw, Bob Andrews, the 3 investigators. I loved these books growing up. They've made the attempt to make them into movies over the years. Their most recent one was about 4 years ago. American-made film, but released only in Germany. I don't get that at all. And from what I heard, it wasn't very good. I never did watch it. It's actually run on Showtime or one of those. But Jupiter's kind of portly. He's a former baby TV star when he was a baby. And Bob is actually he's actually disabled. He has a brace on one of his legs from an accident when he was younger. And Pete's the muscle guy. And I think they're only 12. I might be wrong. They might be 14 in the original books. I forget which. But they are headquartered in an old trailer that's hidden by tons of junk in the junkyard owned by Jupiter's guardians, his aunt and uncle. And they have a benefactor in legendary film director Alfred Hitchcock, who helps, who they give their reports to after every case, because they won a contest and Hitchcock liked them and kept them coming back. So that's why they're called it Alfred Hitchcock's The 3 Investigators books. There's a lot of books out there. Like I said, they have made a couple of attempts to make it into television.
Why do you think
films.
It hasn't worked?
I don't know. I think it's because they've been timed badly. They're not as well known as some of the other young detective novels. And I mean, there are 80, 90 some books out there, but I think it's just bad timing and bad karma. I don't know. I always loved them, and they were always my favorite when I was a kid growing up. My number 8, The 3 Investigators. Okay.
Number 8 for me is a character that sprang to life from a mystery series, and ironically has lasted longer than the books themselves. There haven't been as many books as the TV series that it was spawned from. My number 8, I should say, is Detective Chief Inspector Tom Barnaby, who is the male lead in the Midsummer Murders, which are based on a series of novels written by Caroline Graham. Tom is... The thing about Tom that I really like, played by John Nettles, Tom is very...
crotchety.
No, he's not. I wouldn't say he's crotchety. That's not very nice.
Sorry, I've never been fond of that show.
The thing about Tom that I find interesting is that he's definitely dogged in his pursuit of justice. But if he has to arrest somebody that killed someone and did it for, like, I wouldn't say the right reasons, but I mean the person might have been a bad person or something like that, he doesn't want to do it, but he knows he has to do it. Mm-hmm. And he also is, for a police officer who's seen a lot of bad stuff. Police officers deal with a lot of heinous crap. Let's admit it. He's very kind. He has a very easygoing way with people when he's just doing his job. He's very passionate about his job, but he also, it doesn't like bulldoze over people.
Right.
And I like that, the fact that he's very human. So, my number 8, DCI, Tom Barnaby.
Okay. I've never been a big fan of that show. I don't know why. It just never grew on me the way it did you. I know you enjoy it.
I read some of the books when I was younger, so I was familiar with the character.
Oh, that might be it. I don't know. My number 7, I don't know how to describe this woman. She's an amazing, talented writer. She's an amazing former school teacher. She does everything, seemingly everything, perfectly. And yet, wherever she goes, somebody drops dead. I'm sorry. There's this theory floating around the internet that she's actually a serial killer and she's killing all these people herself before managing to blame it on somebody else. But author Jessica Fletcher, as played by Angela Lansbury, is the ultimate in amateur detective. She writes detective novels, mysteries for a living now, since retiring as a school teacher, and her husband passed away. And I tell you, more people drop dead in the little town of Cabot Cove, Maine, over the years of the 12 years the Murder, She Wrote ran on TV. It's terrifying. It really is. All these people that she knew, and all these other people that she knows elsewhere, she manages to put it together every time. We always loved this, you and I. My mother was a big fan, and we watched it together until I moved up here. And then Kim and I watched it together. Still do occasionally when it's on one of the cable stations. Because Angela Lansbury just rocks. I've loved that woman since I was a very small child when Bedknobs and Broomsticks came out. And I have been a big Angela Lansbury fan ever since. I was like 7 when that came out. And it's like, she's just can do no wrong by me. I love her. And Jessica, God love her. She's so sweet. I wonder if there really is an interesting backstory to the woman.
I just think people are paranoid.
Number 7, Jessica Fletcher.
Okay. Number 7 for me is a character that I actually got into through television, and then went back and read some of the material. I think that he's a really great character. I think that the way that he's written in the books would not have worked on the small screen. Unfortunately, the TV show that came out didn't work either because it was just entirely too hip for the room. My number 7 is Ellery Queen.
My number 6 is Ellery Queen. So go ahead and give yours, and then I'll do mine.
Okay. Ellery Queen, the son of a police officer, is the kind of person that just seems to... He's another one that wherever he goes, unfortunately... Well, usually somebody dies, they call the police, and along comes Inspector Queen, and Ellery's, trailing behind him, because Ellery is just biologically programmed that he just cannot let a mystery remain unsolved. Mm-hmm. He's been portrayed in radio, in films, lots of different places, but
and little radio mini mysteries, Ellery Queen's Minute Mysteries, which we've actually run on Subject Cinema over the years,
and also books, short stories, and full-length novels, and even Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine, which is still out there today.
Yep.
He's, I think, the best known portrayal of him, however, would be the one that was done by the late Jim Hutton on the series Ellery Queen, which they were TV movies and under the name Ellery Queen.
Well, it was a weekly series.
And there was an actual series that ran from 75 to 76. I love this show. I absolutely love it.
And you're right, it was way too hip for the room.
Way too hip for the room. I obviously don't remember it from when it originally ran because I was a small child. Who
was running it on cable for a while, and then we ended up getting the DVD set?
I think
it wasn't MeTV, was it?
No. It was one of the local channels back home.
Yeah,
back in Saugus is where I saw it. I think I first saw it in Saugus.
Well, I mean, I'm saying recently where we've had it like in the last couple of years is when we finally got the DVD set.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't remember which cable network was running it.
The coolest thing about the show, besides Jim Hutton's portrayal, which was fantastic, because I liked his portrayal because his Ellery is more human. The Ellery Queen in the books, the first couple of books is a jerk.
Yeah, he is.
He's a very arrogant know-it-all, and then they finally realized, this character sucks, so we're going to tweak it. So they did. The thing about the show that was so cool was at the end of the show, Ellery would turn to the camera and be like, say something to the effect of, well, I know who did it. Do you know who did it? And then go through all this stuff about the suspects and all that. First time that happened, freaked me the hell out.
Yeah, I know. Me too. We watched this every week. It was on originally in 75, 76. My mom was a huge fan, and that just completely blew my mind when they broke the fourth wall. I'd never seen that before.
I was
it was
like,
really
did
crazy.
that just happen, or did I hallucinate that? That was really cool. So my number 7, Ellery Queen.
Part of the reason I loved the Ellery Queen TV show, and it's a shame it didn't last, it was very much... it was set in the 1930s, and whereas a show like Poirot is very Art Deco, the David Suchet version is very Art Deco. This was gritty New York.
Yeah,
and David Wayne and Jim Hutton made perfect pairing. David Wayne played his father, Inspector Queen, and occasionally they had a kind of a super simpering rival in radio detective actor Simon Brimmer, played wonderfully by John Hillerman before he became a big star on Magnum P.I. And that's where I first saw Hillerman, and I've loved him. I loved him ever since.
I think that's really where he honed the whole pompous jerk character.
Oh, yeah, easily. And the show is so well written. It's done by the same team that did Columbo and Murder, She Wrote, Lincoln Levinson.
It's got crazy guest stars. You know,
it just NBC, for some reason, it was on Sundays at 8, and I don't know what it was on opposite it, but it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And Jim Hutton would pass away just a couple of years later of cancer. And it was, but I loved the way. I don't like the Ellery Queen in the books.
No,
he's snarky and obnoxious. But the
they
TV show rocks.
They did change the character later on. They made him a lot more likable.
If you've never seen the show, there are DVDs out there. I don't know if they're streaming or not on Netflix or one of those. You might want to look. Or maybe Amazon somewhere might have them for streaming episodes, but they're worth seeing. It's a top-notch show. I think there's 19 episodes total. Top-notch. My number 6 favorite detective, Jim Hutton's portrayal of writer Ellery Queen.
Back to me again?
Back to you again.
Okay. From gritty New York, we go someplace a little more genteel. I got into this show very recently. I knew the character. I'd actually read at least one short story about the character. I know that the character has been portrayed by several people on film, but the TV series was what really made me go, wow, this is some really great stuff. My number 6 is Father Brown.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with it. I know you've really gotten into it lately. Yeah.
Father Brown was brought to life by a novelist from England, J.K. Chesterton. Father Brown, whose first name we never find out as far as I know, is a Roman Catholic priest who is very, he's a priest. Priests are supposed to be very calm and centered and, one with the universe, whole thing. But he is the type of person that can look at you and look right through you, right into your very soul. And he isn't one of these types of priests that have their head in the clouds and thinks everything's all sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. He's very aware that human beings can be evil and do evil things. The character, like I said, has been portrayed on numerous, done in movies, TV series. Alec Guinness has played the character on the big screen. The version that I'm familiar with, that I've fallen in love with, is running on our local PBS station. That's a British import. And Mark Williams, which a lot of our fans out there who listen to this show they know Mark as Arthur Weasley from the Harry Potter films.
Oh, that's who plays him?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Now I'm interested.
He plays Father Brown. And I
knew he looked familiar for some reason. And like, oh, man.
The thing about him that is so interesting as a character is that, for one thing, he is a priest, and being a priest, they have to always try and do right and do good things and lead other people to do good things because, let's face it, that's their job. But
yes, it is.
I mean, you put it that way, it sounds a bit plain, but there it is. But he's also not above being like, okay, well, these people are drinking and doing this kind of thing, and this lady's flirting over here and that kind of a thing, and I'm just going to go look over here right now. He's not, everything is black and white. He definitely sees shades of gray, but he also definitely sees that some people are probably beyond saving because they've done some pretty bad stuff. And he brings them to justice very well. So my number 6, Father Brown.
I didn't know that's who played him. That's interesting. I knew he looked familiar.
Yep.
Now I feel like right idiot for not knowing that.
Well, you don't watch it enough, and he doesn't look like Arthur Weasley on the show.
No, true, yeah. My number 5 you've already mentioned. Okay. And I find the character immensely funny and gritty and entertaining. My number 5 is Sam Spade, as portrayed by Humphrey Bogart in The Maltese Falcon. Bogey is the best at this kind of role. He is so good at the kind of... it's not that much different from what he would later do in Casablanca as Rick Blaine. Little bit, not a detective. Rick is just a businessman and a entrepreneur and a rebel and doing stuff he shouldn't do. So he had practice with this role first. And the thing that makes him work is that he is 1 or 2 steps ahead of most of the other people in the film all the way through and just doesn't let on. I mean, yeah, he's still figuring things out, but he's making guesses that are logical that later come true a little bit later on in the film. And the reason The Maltese Falcon works is not just because of Bogey either. He has great chemistry with everybody. Is that Mary Astor that plays the woman?
Yes.
Mary Astor, Peter Lorre, and Sidney Greenstreet, and what's his name?
Elijah
Cook Jr. All great cast, and he is the head of the cast and makes it shine because he does. He has a streak in him. He's been having an affair with his partner's wife. And then when his partner gets iced, he's pretty pissed.
You have to wonder why, because she's a total clinging
Oh, I know.
wingnut.
Oh, God, his wife is such a... Ugh. She's pretty. Maybe she's great in sack. I don't know. But, I mean... he definitely has questionable taste in women from that, but he does have that loyalty to his partner, that he's determined to find out who knocked him off, and it turns out it's the gentleman he gets involved with, who is known as the Fat Man, or one of his people, actually. It's a terrific movie, and Bogey's portrayal is awesome. It's been played by other people over the years, but never quite the same way, because it's Bogey, for God's sake. Number 5, Sam Spade from The Maltese Falcon.
My number 5 is a character that he's absolutely beloved. The first time we see him on screen, you can tell, even though he looks kind of disheveled and acts kind of the fool, you can look at him and sit there and say, there's more going on here than what it seems like. My number 5 is Lieutenant Columbo. Played wonderfully by the late great Peter Falk. Columbo was the type of character that he was dangerous. I mean, that's the only word for he was really dangerous, and not in a James Bond dangerous way. He was dangerous because he seemed so damn harmless.
Yeah.
He
seemed like the kind of cop you could walk all over while he was assimilating everything in his head.
Yeah. He just had this way about him that made him seem like he was so clueless, and that would always inevitably trip up the people that he was going after, because the interesting thing about Columbo was the fact that when you watched the movies and the specials and such, you saw the murderer. You knew who did it.
Right, that was unique to that show pretty much, too. You saw everything happen, and then you watched Columbo put it together.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that character played by Bing Crosby?
No.
Who was the original choice for the character, and he was played, which I found out earlier today, because I was researching it, although I did not put him on my list because I decided to leave all police detectives off. He's been played on stage a couple of times by other people, and they still had some of the mannerisms, but it was still not the Columbo that would become known by Peter Falk.
Right. So. The thing that I really love about him is the fact that in a lot of ways he comes off like he's fluffy and harmless, and he is a coiled rattlesnake. He really is like this serpent that just sits there and waits and waits and waits for their prey to make a mistake, and then he strikes. The one of the few times we actually saw him lose his temper with a suspect was an episode where Leonard Nimoy played a doctor, and he like pounds on the table and shouts at the guy, and it's so out of character that you're like, it's like a bucket of water in the face. It's like, whoa, and then he just goes back to being meek, seemingly.
I don't know if I would call him meek.
Deferential.
Deceptionally.
Deceptionally deferential.
That's not the word I'm looking for either. Deceptively. That's what I was like. Deceptively.
Yeah. He does seem very deferential to people, though.
Yeah. Excuse me. Just one more thing, ma'am. Yeah.
Even though he's the smartest guy in the room.
Oh, easy.
The problem is they don't know that. And when they find it out, it's entirely too late. My number 5, Lieutenant Columbo.
I left all police detectives off my list because I'm thinking maybe we could do another list of those later on, just police people. But I've got to say this. I grew up watching this. My mother was a huge fan of the NBC Mystery Movie, and of course it came back in the 90s on the ABC Mystery Movie. Total of 66 shows or something like that. And the thing that breaks my heart is has been told that when he passed on in the early 2000s, in the mid 2000s, he didn't even remember the character or playing it.
Oh.
And that's such a shame thing. Peter died of dementia, and it was.
That's so sad.
It was just, he was such an amazing actor, and he made that character a part of American culture. My number 4? Well, you have to, I suppose, call him one of the greatest detectives ever. He is an incredibly brilliant scientist, businessman, everything around him. He'll look at what he's needing to find out, whether it's like trying to determine what a hair is from, whose head a hair comes from, or whether that fingerprint matches another one, or just trying to figure out how people keep disappearing out of someplace like Arkham Asylum. My number 4, Batman! See, when you told me you left him off.
You son of a bitch.
He's called the Dark Knight Detective.
Yes.
He's in Detective Comics.
All right. Okay. Well, now don't I?
And now I got to look. I wish I had a picture of. I could have put that on my Snapchat.
Son of a gun.
Bruce Wayne, a.k.a. Batman, really, he is brilliantly deductive and follows everything. And it's not as sappy as they used to show in the 60s show, where everything was marked bat this, bat that. No, he doesn't need that. In the newer versions and in the movies and TV. And the original and the comic, and even in the TV cartoons to some extent, especially Batman the Animated Series, he would work scientifically on things, and you'd see him doing that. He's able to deduce everything going around with people like the Riddler and the Joker and all that stuff. And not only
that, I mean, he's incredibly intelligent. I mean, if you leave all the whole dressing up like a giant bat
he could have been a detective as Bruce Wayne, easily.
if you leave all that stuff out, He's in peak physical condition. He's a genius. He's a master of disguise, which is something that they went into a lot in the comics and on Batman the Animated Series. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not a bad choice. It definitely isn't.
You made the same choice I did. You left the superhero stuff off.
I did, yeah.
Well, I left the cops off.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I figured it was worth it, and when she told me that, I knew it was going to be worth looking in the face, too. My number 4 detective, Batman, a.k.a. Bruce Wayne.
Okay. Wow. I'm kind of surprised this person is on your list, and I was kind of surprised she was so low on your list, but okay. My number 4 is Jessica Fletcher. Played absolutely brilliantly by Angela Lansbury for, I don't even know how many seasons of Murder, She Wrote.
12.
Along
12
with,
seasons plus another 2 seasons of TV movies.
Mm-hmm. There's just something very nice about Jessica. She's a nice lady.
But is she?
Yes. I don't believe the whole serial killer thing. It's, I just don't. It's ridiculous. The thing about her that I find so fascinating is the fact that, in her background, she was a teacher. Mm-hmm. And the fact that she and her late husband did not have children. So she tends to view people, I think, as sometimes she views some of the people she deals with like students, like her students.
Yes.
And she talks to them like high school teenagers, too. And sometimes that can be really funny, especially if it's some pompous, cop in a town that aren't familiar with her, that thinks that this is just some meddlesome middle-aged lady. I mean, the cops in Cabot Cove give her carte blanche because...
Well, yeah, Amos Tupper knows she's the smartest person in the town.
Yeah. And also
and the later one, Ron Masak's character, I can't remember what his name was.
Sheriff Metzger.
Metzger, right.
And actually, the sheriff before Amos was actually a murderer, played by John Astin. Yeah.
No, he was between. He took over for Amos, and Amos came back.
Oh, yeah.
Because at that point in time, they did that because Tom Bosley had landed another mystery show, The Father Dowling Mysteries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing is, Jessica's another one that... the thing I really like about her is her compassion. Mm-hmm. Sometimes some of the cases she's dealt with are people that murdered somebody for greed or for, just terrible reasons, She never deals with... You notice the one thing that she never dealt with on the show was like a serial killer or someone that was like pathologically driven to murder or something like that. They weren't going there on this show.
No.
But sometimes the people that, she had to deal with people that killed someone because they were sick or because they were, they knew that they were going to be arrested, so they were doing it as a mercy. And she would be compassionate with those people. She would be actually pretty kind to them. And I think and that's what I liked about her. The fact that she just seemed like a genuinely nice person. Mm-hmm. She was not overly, Pollyanna nice.
Right.
But just a good person.
A good neighbor. Good friend.
A good neighbor, a good friend. The person you'd sit down and have a coffee with.
Which her friend Dr. Seth Haslett did a lot of, too.
Yeah. Yeah. So my number 4, Jessica Fletcher.
I love Jessica. There's a lot of good in that show, a lot of great characters. The one thing that I liked about that show as it went on is Angela kind of stepped back a little bit so she could have a little bit more time to do other things, was where they'd have Jessica reading from her latest novel.
Yeah.
They did 3 episodes with a set of college students led by Sean Cassidy in one of, I can't remember what the character name was. And it's a shame CBS never picked those up. They were pilots and they never picked them up because I've never seen Sean Cassidy better than he was on those 3 episodes. Of course, now he's a big producer and director and stuff.
Right.
So, my number 3 is the greatest detective of all time. Now, I have him at number 3 because I completely find his character completely thoroughly obnoxious, arrogant, and truly unlikable in a number of different portrayals. And he's been played by so many people on the big screen, the small screen, on radio, everywhere. I have to be honest. He's at number 3 because I enjoy a lot one particular person's performance. I like a couple of the other ones, but it's always going to be Basil Rathbone to me. My number 3, Sherlock Holmes. Rathbone really doesn't play the character quite as straight as it is right out of the book. I know Jeremy Brett did that. My uncle was a huge Sherlock Holmes fan, and he was a fanatic for Jeremy Brett's version of that character.
You were not.
I don't like Jeremy Brett's portrayal. It's not that it's very faithful to the way Conan Doyle wrote the character, but to me, there's got to be something likable. And even Robert Downey Jr. has pulled that off, which I just thought was weird casting when they first did it. But the first movie was great. We've not yet seen the second one, and now they're pre-production on a third. And Jude Law as Dr. John Watson, which was weird. He's been portrayed over the years in so many different ways. There was a show from the 50s that ran up here on NHP TV for a while that was really entertaining.
Yeah.
That I don't remember who played him in that. It was an American show. And Rathbone is great. I can't really comment on the Benedict Cumberbatch version because I've never seen it. I don't watch it. And it's not a traditional Sherlock either. It's a offshoot, just like Elementary, which I do like and have seen a couple of times. But Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce, they used to run those every week on a local station in Spokane when I was in high school. They'd have them on every Saturday afternoon, and I watched them all. I loved them, and I loved the way they portray it. The one thing that was not in the proper portrayal is that they modernized some of them. He was in Washington, D.C., working for the Pentagon during World War II and trying to stop Nazis, which Sherlock Holmes was dead long before that in the books.
Yeah.
So it's like...
But you could see him going
You
could see him going after Nazis because at the heart of everything, when you cut through everything, Sherlock Holmes is a British man, and he's proud of that.
Yes, he is. It all depends on the portrayal for me, but I loved Basil Rathbone, and Robert Downey Jr. was pretty good too. Overall, that's why he's only number 3, though. My number 3 is Sherlock Holmes.
All right. My number 3 is someone that you mentioned already again. And I'm really kind of surprised she's so low on your list, but that's okay. My number 3 is Miss Jane Marple.
I was never able to get into them as well as everybody else. I like them, but I don't love them like you got. I know you do. So.
I do.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, though, Miss Marple, as she's more familiarly known to her fans, obviously one of the most beloved characters written by Agatha Christie. If you read her first introduction to the world, which is in the novel The Murder at the Vicarage, she's a completely different character than she is later on. She's very unlikable in the first book. I mean, I have to commend Agatha Christie for sorting out the bugs and winding up with the character at the end of things when we see her in her final novel, which is called Nemesis. No, Sleeping Murder, is that the last one?
I'm not sure. My mom would know. I don't know.
No, Sleeping Murder is the last one. I'm sorry. She's much softer, as in she's not a gossipy witch anymore, but she's definitely not soft up here.
Yeah.
Her mind is as sharp as a tack, and she sees a lot more than people think that a woman in her 70s, because she was in her 70s, is going to see. She is wise, she's very wise, and manages to always bring up some kind of anecdotal thing that ties in with what's going on at that moment. She's been played numerous times on the big screen and the small screen. Most often on the big screen by Margaret Rutherford, who did a few films. As I have to be honest, I've only seen parts of those, and I've been like, No.
No, I didn't care for her portrayal either. My mom saw a couple of those, and I didn't really care for her version of that
Angela
either.
Lansbury did portray Miss Marple in The Mirror Cracked, which was a big...
Not one of the better Agatha Christie movies, unfortunately.
Which was an all-star cast, including Elizabeth Taylor, Rock Hudson, Kim Novak, Tony Curtis. That was a little bit closer to Miss Marple, but the best and also Helen Hayes portrayed her in 2 TV movies. I liked Helen Hayes' portrayal because that's what I saw in my mind.
It's freaking
when
Helen
I saw
Hayes.
Miss Marple.
Helen Hayes was awesome at everything.
She's also been played by Joan Hickson on the small screen, who I really liked, and also Geraldine McEwen and Julia McKenzie. I just think that she's a great character because she's another one of these people that you would just think is just a silly old woman until you realize that, okay, she knows everything. And she's really good about getting it out there and making people listen to her without being like screaming and yelling, you have to listen to me kind of a thing. She's an iron fist in a velvet glove, definitely. My number 3, Miss Marple.
I knew she would be higher on your list because I knew you liked her. My number 2 is another team. And you have to have them on this. Because if you don't, and you're a guy, they're going to take away your guy card. Because it's like, they're the quintessential guy detective novels for when you're growing up. They've been brought to the TV and the big screen. Well, no, thankfully not yet to the big screen. They've been brought to the small screen 4 times now, I think. Only one of them was a big success. And they have yet to actually portray the characters the way they're written in the original books.
I thought they had at least once.
This is close, but not quite, because they were too young. When they did the original one on the Mickey Mouse Club way back, it was closer to the books than the other ones, but not really. Frank and Joe Hardy, the Hardy Boys, played in they were done by Tim Considine and David Stollery, I think, in the original mysteries that on the Mickey Mouse Club. There was a pilot in the 1960s with Tim Matheson and another actor, I've forgotten who it is. There was, of course, the big hit Hardy Boys Nancy Drew Mysteries with Sean Cassidy and Parker Stevenson, and then there was another version in the 1990s that Nelvana did with Paul, I knew I'd forget his name, Paul Popovich as Joe. I can't remember who played Frank. It was a half-hour show, and it bombed, and it was gone in 13 weeks. Hasn't been back since, although Ben Stiller is trying to get his hands on the rights, and Stratemeyer Syndicate, thank you, is really holding out.
Well, did he want to do something called the Hardy
Men, him and Tom Cruise? I'm like, no.
Surprised he didn't want to cast Owen Wilson.
Yeah, well, me too. Because they're a good team, even if I don't like most of their films. But Frank and Joe are supposed to be 17 and 18 in the books. And they have this whole network of friends that helps them solve these great mysteries. They're really top-notch books for kids 8 to 13, or kids of all ages, actually. Lots of exciting action. They've been rewritten a number of times because when they first came out, they were horribly un-PC. There were racial slurs and all kinds of stuff in the early books, and they rewrote them in the 1950s and 60s to bring them more up to date. But they're just terrific together. I still hope, I don't know who owns the rights right now. Stratemeyer's blocking Stiller because somebody else has the rights, and they've never gone forward with making anything, which I wish they would, because, they still haven't done it right. Maybe if they cast it, it would be good. Don't get me wrong, I love the Sean Cassidy, Parker Stevenson version, but I always was never a big fan of Parker Stevenson. I thought he was too old to be playing Frank. The original cast for that, and I know this because I was a big fan of these types of things when I was in my teens, Sean Cassidy was always going to be in that show. It was designed around him. Mm-hmm. It was up to the producers as to who he would play, because They could have went with him as Frank and Leif Garrett as Joe, which he was the final for the other one, or with Parker Stevenson, Frank, and Sean Cassidy as Joe, and they ended up going with the latter, and Leif went on to do other stuff and completely mess up his life a couple years later, and continued to be doing that today. But, there's just nothing better for guys, teenagers who want some action, excitement. The books are the best, but the TV versions aren't terrible. And let's hope Ben Stiller never gets his hands on the Hardy Boys, number 2.
Okay. I'm not surprised they're on your list. I know you're an enormous fan.
I'm a huge fan, even now.
Number 2 on my list is probably number 1 on your list, if I got you read right.
You probably do, because I knew we would both have this on the list somewhere.
My number 2 favorite detective is one of the greatest detectives in all of history. And if you don't believe it, just ask him. He is fastidious to the point of almost OCD. He is...
I think if you brought him forward in today's day and age, he would have been classified as OCD about a lot of things.
He is methodical. He is cunning. He is well-spoken, definitely charming.
And above all, he's Belgian.
Yep. I was going to say, and the most important thing, he's not French. No insult to any French people out there. My number 2, Hercule Poirot.
Hercule Poirot is my number 1, and I'll talk about him in a few minutes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What can you say about Hercule Poirot that he hasn't said about himself? A detective and a man with a strong sense of justice. Hercule Poirot comes off as, to people that don't know him or people that meet him for the first time, a lot of people actually regard him as almost comical,
Most of them probably think of him as a prissy fancy pants.
Yeah, there's that.
Which is a relatively accurate description of him. But, at least in the books. They didn't always portray him that way in the movies or TV, so...
He is definitely a lover of the finer things in life. And he definitely feels like, evil must be punished. And he's the person that's going to bring people to justice. He has been played by so many different people to varying degrees of success on the big screen, the small screen, the radio, and in many, many wonderful books written by Dame Agatha Christie. My favorite portrayal of all, there's
nobody that plays him like David Suchet.
Nope. Absolutely not. Albert Finney played the character in Murder on the Orient Express.
That is the only portrayal of the character I absolutely hate. And I know he got an Oscar nomination for it. I just could not stand that movie. The remake due out next year with Kenneth Branagh should be interesting.
Definitely. The thing that makes Poirot so interesting is the fact that he has this really cool support network in the people around him. His best friend, I would call him his best friend. Hastings.
Captain
Hastings. Arthur Hastings. Is a very... How do I put this? Earnest person?
He is to Poirot what Watson is to Holmes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's good. He's a very brave man.
Yes, he is.
He's been in the army, and actually, the whole, army thing where people shoot at you. He's been through that. So
if I'm not mistaken, in the books and in the Suchet version, he's a veteran of the Boer War and World War I think. Don't quote me on that.
I think you're right, though. But he's definitely he's a good-hearted. I guess in England they'd call you a decent bloke.
Yeah.
He is definitely on the naive side, though.
Yes.
And it's up to Poirot to be like, Poirot exercising his little gray cells will listen to Hastings and some of his incredibly inane theories, and pretty much be like, "That's nice. Now let me show you what really happened." There's no one like Poirot. He's just you can't really say anything other than that.
Yep.
My number 2, Hercule Poirot.
The reason why Hercule Poirot is number 1 on my list is because of David Suchet. Peter Ustinov is good in some of the films that he did in the 80s and 90s. And he played it on TV a couple times too. The first time I ever tuned in Poirot, I just did it by chance. And it was on, PBS at the time. And I remember flipping it on and thinking, whoa, this is different. And fell head over heels with the way Suchet played the character. I've seen at most of those episodes and most of the movies over the years, except we missed the newer ones.
Yeah.
The final 6 or 8. And he played the character for 25 years and did every single Poirot story, including the final one, Curtain. And it, you would never know David Suchet outside of the Poirot makeup. He looks different. He's in A Perfect Murder with Gwyneth Paltrow and Viggo Mortensen.
Yep.
And I didn't even recognize him. And it's like, oh my God, that's the guy that plays Poirot? Are you serious?
Yeah. I had to call it to your attention. I was like,
and then he
David
has
Suchet.
and then in a couple movies he's got a toupee on, and it's like, oh wow, he's really amazing. And he has such a great chemistry with the gentleman playing Hastings, the lady playing Miss Lemon, his secretary, and the wonderful Inspector Japp, who is kind of his foil at the beginning, but eventually they do actually become friends.
Yeah.
Suchet's portrayal is just amazing, and I always wondered why, for some reason, he never won an Emmy. He did get nominated, I think, twice in the 90s for it, but he never won, and I loved his portrayal of that character. He just made it come alive. And like I said, Kenneth Branagh playing the character, and he's also directing and writing the remake of Murder on the Orient Express, should be interesting. Because I like Kenneth, most of what he does anyway. And so it'll be interesting to see his take on the character. But for me, heads and shoulders above everybody else stands the wonderful David Suchet as Hercule Poirot, number 1 on my list. And I know who number 1 on your list is.
Good luck having him stand head and shoulders above anybody else. He's like...
That was so mean.
5 foot...
Suchet is very short.
Or something like...
He's 5'6", I think. He's a short character.
Yeah, he's 5'4".
They had to find an actor that was...
He's 5'4".
They had to find an actor that could fit into the role.
And I know telling you this is a horrible idea, because I know the second I do tell you this, you're going to be searching for this until you find it. Did you know Orson Welles did a radio production with the Mercury Players?
Yes, actually, I already have it.
Oh, you do?
It's on the Wells radio things I bought years
goodness.
ago.
You won't have
I've never listened to it, but if there's ever an actor who is more naturally suited to playing Hercule Poirot, it's Orson Welles, because they have the same exact mindset.
Yeah.
You don't believe him? Ask him.
Except the height thing would be a problem.
Yes, it would, and Poirot was not that large as Orson got as he got older, but
Yeah, anyone who knows me, anyone who's listened to the shows, and anyone who notices which name has not come up yet, has probably already twigged onto who my number 1 favorite detective is. What else can you say? He is detection. I mean, when you talk about someone being a detective, this name comes up no matter what. My number 1, Sherlock Holmes. What can you say about a character that actually was mentioned in the Guinness Book of World Records, listing him as the most portrayed movie character in history?
That doesn't surprise me at all. There's been so many different versions.
I think the only character that has been played almost as much as Sherlock Holmes, but not quite, is Count Dracula.
I would have figured it would have been Jesus, actually, but that's hard to tell. That's a if you believe that's a real person. So
Right.
because most people, who are religious like we are, do believe in him, but it's not a fictional character. Is what I'm saying.
Right.
At least not the way we think about it.
No. Well, neither was Dracula when you know.
Dracula was fictional based on reality.
Right.
So it was a little bit different.
Anyway, back to Sherlock.
Yeah.
Well, who was actually also
based
probably
on one of his
based
professors,
on based on a professor, a doctor that was known to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The doctor's name was, I believe, Joseph Bell, who was a surgeon.
Right. Yeah, a surgeon.
A surgeon at the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh. Sherlock Holmes he's a lot of things to a lot of different people. He can be acerbic, he can be wise, he can be sexy. There's
Where?
2 words: Benedict Cumberbatch.
Okay, that's an alternative portrayal, though.
3 words: Johnny Lee Miller, who I also wouldn't throw out of bed
That's
for
also
eating.
an alternative
Who
portrayal.
I also wouldn't throw out of bed for eating crackers. But I think that, it depends on who portrays the character as to whether or not it works. Basil Rathbone obviously is the first person that a lot of people think of.
Yeah, it's still my favorite. What can I say?
And other people have, taken their hand as well, and to varying degrees of success. Myself, I actually really liked the portrayal that Peter Cushing turned in The Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yes, he was good.
I liked that portrayal of Holmes. I think that he just came off as... The thing about Holmes that I really, really like is the fact that a lot of times he is interested in saving lives or protecting property or, whatever the actual case is. He really does want to do those things. But even more important than the case is the puzzle. And trying
Yes, he likes to do that.
Yeah, is trying to solve the mystery.
Which he has in common with Hercule Poirot. He's the same way, the same mindset.
As we've mentioned, the character has been played over and over and over and over and over again by lots of different people.
What was your opinion of the Jeremy Brett portrayal? Because I know he's the favorite for most Holmes aficionados, and he played it for a number of years and probably would have continued at some point had he not died.
I liked it. I wasn't crazy about it because there was just something about his Sherlock that felt off.
One of my favorite one-shot portrayals of the character, if I may butt into your thing, was Tom Baker. Tom Baker played it in The Hound of the Baskervilles for a British television. It aired here on America on A&E. And it was not that long after he left the role of the Doctor. And it was stupendous. He did a great job. And I was like, Tom Baker as Sherlock Holmes? What? But it was really good, and I would love to have seen him play it more than once. Unfortunately, he didn't. But you know.
I think that I think the thing about Holmes is that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote the character very, really with a lot of detail to his physical aspects and stuff like that. So we actually have in our mind's eye what we all think Sherlock Holmes is going to look like. And he has been played by, you name it, somebody's played him. Everybody from serious portrayals to funny portrayals, everybody on stage, on screen, on the big screen, on the small screen, people like, a great example of somebody that played him on stage, I wish I have somebody had a copy of this, was Leonard Nimoy. He played Sherlock Holmes on stage. Roger Moore has played Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
There have been, like I said, humorous portrayals from people like John Cleese, Peter Cook, and then more serious portrayals from, Jeremy Brett, like
I don't think I've ever seen John Cleese play it. I have seen Peter Cook. I don't think I've ever seen John Cleese play Holmes. That would be interesting.
And like you mentioned, I mean, there's 2 shows right now dealing with Sherlock Holmes in a modern setting. You've got Elementary on CBS with Sherlock being played by Johnny Lee Miller, and Sherlock from England played by Benedict Cumberbatch.
About to start running its 4th and final season, they have said. So,
yeah. Oh my God. But anyway,
isn't it strange though?
What?
They run 4th and final season. There's only going to be 13 or 14 episodes overall because they've only done 3 or 4 shows a season. So it's interesting to see. There's not going to be that much of Benedict around, really.
No, I know.
And yet he's got such a devoted following, including yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think, that's for a number of different reasons. One of the other things that I like about the character of Sherlock Holmes is that he's not perfect. He's definitely not perfect. And it, depending on the time period when the film or TV movie or whatever was done, is where you can explore those flaws more deeply or not.
Right.
Like a film like the Hound of the Baskervilles that was done with Peter Cushing as Holmes, we didn't even touch on, the drug issues and other stuff like that.
The drug issues weren't really played with until Nicholas Meyer's books in the 1970s. And I know they made one of them into a movie, but I've never seen it.
Well, the thing about that is, I mean, when Conan Doyle wrote this character, it was brought up in passing, and it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
Later on, people are reading the books, and they're like, "What the what? What do you mean he was injecting what?" Because by then people had realized drugs were bad. Okay, and you don't obviously somebody using cocaine on a pretty regular basis is going to screw themselves up.
Injecting cocaine, not snorting.
No, injecting cocaine, a 7% solution of cocaine, which doesn't sound like a lot, but
it's enough.
You're sitting there going, "Holy crap, he's a drug addict," But like I said, depending on the time frame, that was something that would just be like, okay, we're just going to tuck that over in the corner over here and never bring it up. Or it's going to be right here in the spotlight,
Which they've done with the Robert Downey Jr. version.
And it makes him more human.
Yeah,
considering the fact that he's so superhuman and so damn smart, it's scary. It makes him more human and more believable and more identifiable, even if you're not someone who, has abused drugs. Someone in your life who probably has.
Right.
Someone who's not perfect, and that makes but when it comes to solving crimes, he's pretty damn perfect.
He is.
And that's why he's my number 1.
That's a good choice. My top 10 again. Jane Marple at number 10, Paul Drake, number 9, number 8, The Three Investigators, number 7, Jessica Fletcher, number 6, Ellery Queen, number 5, Sam Spade, number 4, Batman, number 3, Sherlock Holmes, number 2, Hardy Boys, and number 1, Hercule Poirot. And with me, they are usually specific portrayals. Anyway.
Yeah, me too. I'm never going to live that down.
No, I'm not going to bother you about that. Just like you won't bother me about Columbo, because I would have had him on the list if I'd done Cops, because I love Columbo.
By the way, I've already gotten ranked on by Anthony at work for forgetting Star Wars a couple of weeks ago, so never living that one down either. So my list from 10 to 1, Sam Spade, Goldie Schulz, DCI Tom Barnaby, Ellery Queen, Father Brown, Lieutenant Columbo, Jessica Fletcher, Miss Jane Marple, Hercule Poirot, and Sherlock Holmes.
I think we did pretty good.
I do too.
Pretty good representation of great detectives.
Yeah.
My turn.
Oh boy.
We're entering the holiday season on our next show.
Are we really? I hadn't noticed.
Ching, 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 ching. And next week, we will bring you our top 10 goofiest holiday songs.
Okay.
I can come up with 10 like that. You're probably going to have to do some research.
Now, can I ask if parody songs are acceptable?
Parody songs are acceptable. Anything that's Christmas or Hanukkah or holiday, end-of-year holiday, not Halloween, obviously. End-of-year holiday connected, and that would include actually a couple that don't actually mention a holiday but are played around the holiday time.
Right.
As long as they're goofy and either they're just so weird they're funny or they're deliberate novelties or parodies or whatever.
Mockeries, however. Yeah. Okay.
What was that?
Mockeries.
Yeah, and I just think it'll be fun. Of course, we won't be able to play them, but we'll put if I can pull them together, we'll put a Spotify list up or something so you can hear most of them. And scary enough, most of the ones I'm going to put on my list are available on Spotify. So it's like, oh my God. It'll be fun. Don't forget to join us every week for Subject Cinema on Sundays at 7 p.m. or thereabouts. We have a lot of great stuff. We're coming into the end of the year stuff. We're going to be having all of our award stuff, and we've got our Just 'Cause I'm Can awards, Poppies and Rosies coming up, and then in January we've got starting all over again with the 12th annual Festival of Film Festivals. It's going to be a big year on Subject Cinema as we continue to go forward there. And we have lots of fun. And we also have fun on, Kim has fun, and her listeners have fun, on Platinum Rose's Garden, her show devoted to the Winchester Boys of Supernatural. Hopefully you guys will come out and check PlatinumRosesGarden.com out. As TC mentioned, it is my show all about the CW hit Supernatural in its 12th season. And I do episode reviews and talk about the show and any news that's going on. And it's just fun and rambling and definitely not safe for work. The F-bomb gets dropped frequently because I have a dirty mouth. There's also our 2 spinoffs of Subject Cinema. No, that's this show. That's this show, honey. 3 Minute Weekend and Tuesday Digidex. On Friday, 3 Minute Weekend has all the latest films coming out to U.S. theaters that weekend. Tuesday Digidex has the same on Tuesday with DVDs and streaming. So we hope you'll check them out. 3 Minute Weekend is pretty much a state of mind because it actually ends up running around 8 minutes every week. I'm sorry, I thought I could do it in 3. I can't. But I don't want to change the title of it. And those are both on the same feed as is Subject Cinema and Front Row 5 and 10. And coming up in January, we have a brand new show called Real Rewind. I hope you'll check it out also. And while we're at it, please take the time, if you enjoy this show and you enjoy any of the PNR Network shows, or you enjoy our websites, eCinemaOne, eCinemaBoston, Planet BiblioMusica, and other stuff, please join us and become a patron, because we really are trying hard to raise some money for some badly needed new equipment. We are really in sore need of equipment. And we hope that you'll become a Patreon. It's similar to Kickstarter if you're not familiar with it, except that the donation that you agree to make is a monthly recurring donation. And you'll still get all the shows for free, but we do have some extra stuff that'll be only on the Patreon feed. So I've got some bloopers coming up. We've got an interview coming up, and it'll be Patreon exclusive. So you definitely want to check those out. And it's really simple. We levels start at $2, and we got great perks for everybody doing it, and we hope you'll join us at patreon.com/PNR Networks. We also want to call your attention to a GoFundMe campaign for Kim's friend and my friend Katie. Katie is one of Kim's Supernatural fans, and I've become her friend too over the years. She is going to be entering a big fight against cancer right now, and we have the information in our show notes on Sunday, so go over to Subject Cinema and you can click on her GoFundMe, and she definitely needs all the help she can get for this big battle that's facing her in the next few months as she strives to try and get her health back after they discovered cancer during a regular routine surgery. It's not going to be an easy time, so please take the time to donate there as well. So next week, we will and by the way, write to us with ideas for you, by the way, before I forget, at frontrow@pnrnetworks.com. Next week, join us right here, every Wednesday on Front Row 5 and 10, where next week we will be doing our top 10 goofiest holiday songs, and it'll be fun. So we hope you enjoyed this week's show, and this is Kim Brown. I'm TC Kirkham. We're signing off here on Front Row 5 and 10. We hope we'll be at the top of your listening list. See you next week. Bye.
You've been listening to Front Row 5 and 10 with Kim Brown and TC Kirkham.
Podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.